Okay, hi everyone. I hope you're all keeping well. My name is Rahul. I'm one of the co-founders of Travel the Unknown. And thank you again for joining us for this online travel talk this evening. Again, it's encouraging to see so many people sign up for this particular talk as it's focused purely on Indian wildlife. So whether you're planning a first-time trip to India for a wildlife experience or whether you're a seasoned traveler for wildlife, hopefully this talk will whet your appetite further. This presentation will, of course, make reference to India's iconic cat, the tiger, but because we are covering the diversity of India's wildlife, we will be talking about other species as well. So on to our speaker, who will bring this all to life. I was delighted when Surya Ramachandran accepted our invitation to speak to you all. Although he said I did pose him a very, very difficult challenge in trying to condense India's wildlife into just 25 minutes. I also appreciate the fact that he's able to join us live from the fringes of the forest in South India, very late evening his time. He is without doubt one of the most knowledgeable and passionate naturalists in India who I have met, and he has vast experience of leading trips. He's the author of wildlife books, and as his presentation will show, he is a truly outstanding photographer. So just want to go through some very brief housekeeping rules. So yeah, again, if everybody could keep their microphones muted, please, and also videos disabled, it will just help ensure that we have a better quality of presentation if we can. Again, we will be doing questions and answers after the presentation. So after I speak and Surya, there'll be time for those. If any questions could be submitted via the chat option, please. So for those using a laptop or a desktop computer, you should see a chat icon at the bottom of your screen. Anyone logging in from a mobile device, you may have to find the chat option via the participants button. Again, we will try to answer all questions, but apologies if we don't get through to everybody's questions. So just a little bit about Travel the Unknown for those who have not done joined our previous talks. We arrange small group tours, a maximum of 12 people. Although for wildlife trips, there would be probably a maximum size would be 6 to 8 if it's a group tour. We do a number of tailor-made and private tours, and I would say most of the wildlife tours that we organize tend to be tailor-made or private trips. We have intimate personal knowledge of our destinations. We've developed some really innovative wildlife itineraries, and we've handpicked the lodges that we use. During the course of our trips, there is continuous interaction with experts and naturalists, and also we'll covering topics such as kind of conservation, which is obviously a big challenge worldwide, not just in India. We have some excellent local partners that we work with, and as you'll see from Surya's presentation, we feel we work with probably some of the most passionate, knowledgeable naturalists around. We have been recommended by a number of guidebooks, as you can see there. We were the winner of the British Travel Awards in 2018 and bronze winners last year. And we are fully financially protected and atoll bonded, which is obviously very important. This is just a snapshot of 3 popular tours that we have on our site. And again, Surya will mention many of these species during his presentation. We have a Big Six of India tour. We do a very specialized tour in northeastern India. And we run a Big Cats of India tour. Having said that, as many of our trips are tailor-made, we organize a number of tiger-themed tours if that's specifically what you're interested in. Otherwise, we can customize, wildlife tours, based on your interests. And again, there is more information on this on our website as well. Again, just regarding the question and answers at the end of the presentation, if they could be kept specific to India as a wildlife destination, that would be great. And hopefully we won't have any audio or video issues on this call, but if we do, please bear with us. We haven't disappeared. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over now to Surya, who will take you through India.
Okay, Rahul, can you hear me now?
I can hear you fine. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak on my country's wildlife, and I hope I can try to do justice to that in the 25 minutes you've given me. Let's see how that goes. So can all of you see the screen and my pointer, Rahul? All going good?
Yep, it's fine, thank you.
Okay, here we go. So India as most of you know, is a subcontinent, as it's what it's called. It has a huge variety of landscape types, a huge variety of climatic conditions. So there is a lot happening here in terms of wildlife, and I'll try to touch upon it to the best of my abilities in the time given to me. But this is more of the design to be more of a presentation that can kindle your interest and make you want to know more. But I will not be covering all of it, obviously. So I've been a naturalist in India for the last decade, and my sole purpose in the last decade has been to roam around the country, pretty much. That's all I do. I roam around different forests in the country, go to different places, see all kinds of things which are on my list, things which are not on my list, things which I come across, things which I want to come across. It's a huge world out there when it comes to biodiversity of India. But this is my country. This is how the whole world knows India as. You see that it's a lot of cities, a lot of states, and most of you who haven't been to India to see its wildlife, or who haven't been to India to, who haven't actually looked up the Indian wildlife scenario, this is what you'll have your image of India as: a huge, crowded country, a lot of people, busy markets. There's a lot happening. But this is how I look at India. This is the kind of map I like to see, and not the state and city map. And this is done by a friend of mine, Rohan. He runs a website called Green Humor, and he designed this beautiful wildlife map of India, trying to show roughly where everything is found. So maybe later I'll put his link up in the chat, and you guys can look up a higher resolution of the map. But for now, this will be a reference for us. So of course, based on the map, here you go. We have the high snow-capped Himalayan mountains to the north. We have the deserts of Rajasthan, of course, a total contrast to the lush green forests of the Himalayas. We have the Western Ghats and the northeastern rainforests in our country, which is again a different spectrum altogether. Grasslands, of course, in central India, in the Deccan, and in Western India. And they harbor a very interesting set of species, including what you see here, the black buck, which is considered to be the fastest antelope in the world. And what you see here is not the ocean, it's the salt flats in Western India, in a place called Kutch. Kutch is a small extended peninsula that extends from the western extreme of India. And this, like any other habitat, harbors its own unique, precious inhabitants. And what you see here is, of course, shifting from the deserts and the mountains straight to the coast. This is the mangroves Sundarbans, very popular as the place for the tigers of India. But there is a lot more to tigers than just the Sundarbans, which I'll tell you in a minute. And of course, throughout India, you have forests. That's the traditional way that we bird sounds and everything. So when you have so much, what is generally projected first and what is the most popular is, of course, the Bengal tiger. It is a fantastic animal to see, and an animal which India, for some reason, has been very successful in conserving. To put it in perspective, when I say conserving, it is still an endangered species. But if you look at this map of all the different tiger species in the world, or the subspecies, as I should rightly say, the Bengal tiger is probably the largest, has the largest global range, and it also has the largest population, over 3,000 individuals roughly in India. Whereas every other subspecies, including the Siberian tiger, or the Indo-Chinese, or the Malayan, or the Sumatran, there is literally no chance of one being encountered in the wild, except on camera traps, maybe. So that is, in reality, the Bengal tiger is the only subspecies that you can see in the wild, and that's something we Indians are very, very proud of. But this is a very strange images to the right by each other. I mean, you have the lions in Africa and tigers in India, but interestingly, India is also the one place where you have lions. We have a small national park in the western extreme of India called Gir, S-A-S-A-N, Gir, Sasan Gir, where we have the last population of Asiatic lions. And historically, they say, sorry, this loss of power. Historically, they say there existed forest patches where lions and tigers roamed together. That doesn't happen now, unfortunately, because the lions are restricted to one park. But yes, India is a country where you have two of the largest big cats in the world. So just to show you where I was talking about the lions, this is the western extreme of India where Gir exists, and that's the place of the lions. And tigers exist all around here, which you can see. All around these parts is where tigers are found. Tigers are literally found throughout the country, except in the high peaks of the mountains of the Himalayas and in the driest parts of the deserts. Tigers are otherwise found everywhere. But I'm going to focus on a very typical tiger habitat, which is central India, which you can see the tiger in the middle, the central Indian habitat. And that is probably where most of the popular tiger reserves are found. When you have tigers, you need prey. And these animals are probably the backbone of the forest of central India. These are spotted deer. And they're very, very beautiful animals, but they're also animals which exist in great numbers. So the higher the number of spotted deer we have in our forests, it can support a very healthy population of tigers. Like spotted deer, you have other prey. This interesting animal, which looks like a cow which is wearing white socks, that's the Indian gaur. It is wrongly called the Indian bison. It's not a bison. It looks like a bison, but it's a gaur. And it's considered to be the largest bovine in the world. And this animal, weighing up to a ton, can be brought down by a tiger. That is how amazing that cat is. It can bring down a 1,000-kilogram animal by itself. So, of course, all of you may have come across the Jungle Book, and this is, of course, Balu, the real Balu, not the one which they show in brown in the movies. This is the actual sloth bear of India, which is found along with the tiger in its forests. And of course, we do have wild dogs, another carnivore of our jungle, probably the top predator in our forest, because a pack of wild dogs is probably more something that even a tiger would fear, because the pack sizes can get up to 14 to 20. I've seen even a pack of 26, and a pack of that size, literally nothing can touch them. And a pack of dogs probably are the most successful hunter in the world. Most of you may have gone to Africa and you would have seen the painted dogs of Africa hunting in the meadows. It is a very similar story, but except that these dogs look very different in India. So we were just talking about the largest cat in the world, of course, the Bengal tiger. But do you know that this cat exists in the same forest, and it's the smallest wild cat in the world? This is the rusty spotted cat. This is the smallest wildcat in the world, which is found in the same forest as the largest wildcat in the world. And that's how interesting the cat diversity is. In fact, in India, we have 15 species of wildcats. I mean, that's a number which is quite something, because in the whole of the African continent, we have 10 species of wildcats. And in India, in just one country, we have 15 species of wildcats, roughly 5 big cats, most of the lot. People don't talk about this animal much in India. I mean, of course, it's associated a lot with Africa and maybe Sri Lanka. But India has probably one of the largest populations of leopards in the world. And having said that, I'll even be bold enough to say India has one of the best places to see leopards in the world. And that's how interesting it is. In fact, this small place near the town of Udaipur in Rajasthan, just about 3 hours away, there's a place called Bera. And Bera is a very interesting place because there are leopards in granite boulders, and they've lived in those boulders for over 100 years. Of course, different generations of leopards, and living amongst people, living amongst cattle herders, living amongst fields, farms, villages, but no conflict in the last 125 years, no human conflict. Of course, they have been taking livestock once in a while, but there has been no human conflict. And there are some operations there which actually drive on these granite boulders, and you can get as close to these leopards as you need to. And literally there's no tree cover. So the viewing of these cats is fantastic. And according to me, I have been to Sri Lanka, I've been to Africa. I would say this is probably the best leopard viewing I've experienced in the world. And talking about leopards, this is a very special image. Both of these animals are leopards. The one in front, the female, is a melanistic or a black leopard, and the one in the back is, of course, a large male leopard. And this black leopard is actually an animal which is actually in very good numbers in India. If you go to the parts of South India, parts of northeastern India, there are places where there is a very good population of black leopards or melanistic leopards. And this is also something to look forward to when someone comes to India. But when we talk about leopards and rocks, I mean, there's only one cat that comes to my mind. Leopards and rocks, I will take you all to the small piece of land to the northern extreme of India, a land which exists beyond the Himalayan mountains, and that's the Trans-Himalaya of our country. And that, of course, is this. It's the cold desert or the part of Tibet that juts into India. And in this small place called Ladakh, there exists a very special cat that lives in the rocks in this landscape. And that, of course, is the snow leopard. And I've been lucky enough to work with a snow leopard over the last 4 years. And I don't think, I mean, the tigers are amazing, leopards are beautiful, but just the thrill of finding one of these cats, these ghosts of the mountains, as they're called, out in the largest landscape of Ladakh, and it's quite an experience. And these cats, as you can see, built for the altitude, thick fur, a long tail to run down mountain slopes, short feet to keep their center of gravity low. They're perfectly designed for the mountains of Ladakh. And over here, they share their habitat with other lesser known animals from India, like the Tibetan wolf, which is, of course, another top carnivore in the Trans-Himalayan region of our country. We also have one of the most charismatic mountain goats, the Asiatic ibex, or the Himalayan ibex, as some people call it. Of course, the goats are best told by their beard, and the sheep don't have a beard. So we have wild goat and wild sheep, which the snow leopards prey on. And we also have India's largest land carnivore. People think the tiger is the largest land carnivore in India. It's not true. The Himalayan brown bear, is the largest land carnivore in our country. And this animal is found along with snow leopards in these mountains of the Himalayas. It's quite an amazing world when you think of it, because we were talking about forests, we were talking about rocks, we were talking about deserts, and suddenly we've gone into the cold desert where there are no trees and all you see is brown rocks and white snow. And that is where you have a whole new set of animals. So we have spoken about the north of the Himalayas, which is this part. Let us move south of the Himalayas. Let's move to the areas where the rivers from the mountains come down and drain a beautiful flat land, the Brahmaputra and the Ganga, which flow this way. And these mountains, when they come down from the Himalayas, when they come down through the gorges and they hit the plains, they spread out. And these floodplains are full of life. And probably the first animal that comes to my mind when I think about these floodplains is, of course, the Indian one-horned rhinoceros, which is actually considered to be the largest species of rhino in the world. And this is how you see them in some parts of the country. I mean, it's not whether you see a rhino, it's about how many rhinos you see. And that's how special the conservation story of the Indian rhinoceros is. In the 60s, we have literally less than 100 individuals left in the wild. And now we have over 3,000 rhinos, and we are actually giving excess rhinos to other countries like Nepal and other parts of India to re-establish population. So it's a beautiful success story, which you can know more about when you come to the places where they're found. And of course, when you have giants like rhinos and tigers, you should have another big animal, which is, of course, the Indian elephant or the Asian elephant. An interesting fact about the Asian elephant, the year of the Asian elephant looks like India. And if you look up a picture of an African elephant, the ears will look like Africa. So that's how easy it is to tell. I mean, these guys belong to us and the African elephants belong to Africa. So that's kind of obvious when you see their ears. In the forests surrounding the floodplains, we do have great apes. Again, an animal which people don't associate with India. We have great apes, this is the Hulok gibbon. In fact, we have over 16 different species of primates in India. In fact, one of the things I've been doing is taking people out to see primates, and it's been a great journey because it's not just seeing species, but when you actually see primates in the field, they're not boring ever. They'll always be doing something. The young ones will be playing, the adults will be foraging, they will be running around, climbing trees, coming down. So it is always great fun. The jungle is never boring when there are monkeys around. And when you don't see anything, you can always spend time with monkeys and have a great time. So primates, of course, fantastic. But there is also another set of animals in India which slowly is coming to the fore. Like this, of course, is the Indian pangolin. a very hard to see animal. But there are other special animals in India like lesser fauna, which for all these years people thought is very hard to see. But now slowly people have figured out how to find them. One of them, of course, is the red panda or the Himalayan fire fox. In fact, there is a part of India in next to Nepal, and that is probably the best place to see the red pandas in the wild in the whole world. And it looks like a red raccoon. It's very hard to describe, but I don't think I've seen a more beautiful animal in the world. And especially in the mornings when you see them and the Himalayan sun falls on their red coat, it is something words cannot explain. At least my vocabulary isn't good enough to talk about the beauty of this animal. We also have an interesting fox called the Tibetan Sand Fox, which is found in Sikkim, which is another northern Himalayan state. And again, a very weird animal, a broad face, doesn't look like a fox, doesn't look like any other animal you have ever come across, but it's there and people can see them now. And all this while we thought it's very hard to see these animals. Again, another secretive animal which people have figured out how to find and conservation has brought them to the fore is, of course, the two long-snouted animals of our Gangetic basin. One is, of course, the Gangetic river dolphin or a blind dolphin, which you see above. And the one below is the gharial or the long-snouted crocodile. Both of these exclusive fish eaters are facing a lot of threats these days because of construction of dams and overfishing. But slowly, because of conservation efforts, their populations are bouncing back in some places, and it is actually possible to see them and maybe even save them in the years to come. We've been talking about animals, we've been talking about charismatic animals, but India being so big, there's bound to be a whole lot of species of birds. In fact, we have 1,350 species of birds in our country, and that's not a small number. We have beautiful birds in our rainforests, like you see the Oriental dwarf kingfisher, the Malabar trogon, the tragopans, which are made popular by the poems of Kipling and Wordsworth. And it's beautiful when you go into these forests of Northeast India and South India just to see the endemic birds, and the beauty of them is fantastic. But it's not just always beauty when you talk about birds. There is also the beautiful way in which they have adapted to their surroundings. This bird that you see here is a frogmouth. It's a dull, drab bird which is perfected the art of sitting still. And when it sits still in the rainforest, you don't see it. And that is, in my eyes, a beautiful thing. It may not be as beautiful and colorful as the other birds I showed you earlier, but this perfect adaptation is as beautiful as that. And then, of course, you have the critically endangered. These are the great Indian bustards of the Thar Desert of Rajasthan. Probably less than 100 birds left in the wild. And because they are such free-ranging birds, it's very hard to conserve them because they fly into parts in other countries where they may not be protected, and they are heavily shot for their meat and also for game. So a bird which is beautiful to see, probably one of the largest flying birds in our country and probably in the world, but sadly, it is facing an uncertain future. So we've spoken about pretty birds, we've spoken about special adapted birds, we've spoken about rare birds, but birding for me always has been just being amongst birds. There are places in India like Kutch and Bharatpur and parts of South India, parts of Central India, where you can just go sit in some places and have a view like this, where you have thousands of birds in front of you. And that, according to me, is a great way to bird, a great way to spend time with birds. And birding for me is something as simple as this. It doesn't have to be chasing the most amazing or the most beautiful or the most rare. And talking about birds and bird numbers, this is a special place in India. It's a small village called Keechan in Rajasthan. K-H-E-E-C-H-A-N, Keechan. And this village, over the last 40 years, has been feeding over 80,000 demoiselle cranes. And this is how you see them when you go there. You stand on all these terraces of the people's houses, and the cranes come flying in. And I don't think there is a more beautiful way to see bird numbers. Of course, we talk about starling murmurations, we talk about red-billed quellias in Africa. But when you see cranes, birds that you don't see in such large numbers usually, landing in front of you and feeding in front of you in such great numbers. It is one of the natural wonders of the world, according to me. So I've spoken about the things Rahul is and all of us speak about when you talk about wildlife in India. But since I'm talking about my country, I'd like to say a few things. I don't look most of the time for any of the things I mentioned in the earlier parts of the presentation. I look for these guys. I look for frogs. And this is a beautiful galaxy frog from South India. I look for snakes. Of course, we have the largest venomous snake in the world, the king cobra. And we also have this beautiful golden iridescent snake called the pied-bellied shield tail, which is a burrowing snake which just feeds on termite eggs and earthworms. We have lizards which display by extending their loose skin on their neck, and they display like that from barren ground for their females. We, of course, have crocodiles. So we have an amazing diversity in our country, and that is not, of course, always spoken about because most of the people want to know about the birds and mammals. But this is what I do. I mean, when I'm free, I just go to one of these forests and look for these guys, and that is something I enjoy. And of course, you don't even have to get into butterflies and dragonflies and damselflies. It's a whole new world, and there is no way I can end up seeing all of them in India. In fact, I want to share a small bit of information about this butterfly that you see to the right of the screen. Recently, it was discovered that this butterfly, the Bhutan glory, it's called, actually has these eye-like markings to mimic a spider. It mimics a particular kind of spider, and the rest of it looks like a spider web. And that confuses a lot of predators and they let them be. How amazing is that? These are the kind of stories that come out when you go out on walks in India. India has, of course, jeep safaris. You can go on boat rides. You can go on night drives. But we also have beautiful places where you can walk to experience the smaller things like these that can blow your mind if you want to pay attention to it. So I'd like to leave you guys with this thought here. This has been my companion during the lockdown period. He has been in my desk over the last 1 month. Every day I sit on my laptop. He's either on the laptop or on the side. It's called the Chrysilla spider. One of my neighbors called it the rainbow spider, aptly, I think. It's the most beautiful thing I've seen. And this has been my safari, watching him do his own thing every day on my desk. So that's what wildlife is for me. It's what you connect with. So for each of you, it may be different things. And it could even be just this spider. So India has a lot to offer. You just need to be asking the right questions. And of course, there is always a solution to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Surya. Thank you very, very much for giving us an insight into the mind-boggling diversity of India's wildlife. So we've got a number of questions that have come in. And one of those is, where would you recommend the best chance to photograph some of the smaller cats? So you mentioned the rusty spotted cat, but also the desert cat and fishing cat. I mean, what would be your recommendations for those?
Oh, of course, the rusty spotted cat is very widespread, but in my experience, Satpura in central India is probably one of the best places to see them because they allow night drives in the buffer zone of the forest. So when you go to Satpura, if you maximize your time, do 2-3 night drives, especially in the early summer or the summer months, you have a very, very good chance of seeing a rusty spotted cat. Talking about fishing cats, again, found in the Sundarbans, found in the Himalayan foothill forests. In my experience, I would say parts of forests around Calcutta, there are some specialist camps for fishing cat, but also Dudhwa in the Terai of India in Uttar Pradesh, just north of Delhi, is a very good place for fishing cats. There are other 8 species, desert cat. We have the lynx and the Pallas's cat in Ladakh, which is the Trans-Himalaya. The desert cat, of course, the Thar Desert is the best place, and of course parts of Kutch. Jungle cat you can pretty much see anywhere in the country. And of course, the other smaller cats can be quite difficult, like the caracal, golden cat, marbled cat. All of them can be quite difficult, and I can't really mention a place for them.
Okay. And which would you say is the best national park or area for seeing a diversity of animals, and when would be the best time to visit?
I would say Kaziranga, eyes closed. It is probably the place where you can go and experience a huge variety of animals and birds because it is a floodplain. It is extremely rich, extremely diverse.
And
I
that's in
would
Assam,
suggest going
northeast
in the
India. Yeah.
yes, yes, Kaziranga in Assam. It's actually a World Heritage Site because of how beautiful and how diverse it is. In fact, I would suggest going in the months of March because every year to encourage regeneration of short grass for the rhinos to graze. So March is usually a good time to go there and see the wildlife.
Okay, great. And is it possible to see striped hyenas in India, and where would you suggest for
Definitely,
those?
definitely. Striped hyenas, Ranthambore is a great place. If you actually stay outside Ranthambore in the night, certain properties have hyenas coming to them. Bera in Rajasthan, the place I mentioned for the leopards, is again a very good place for hyenas.
Hmm.
Having said that, Bharatpur also the bird sanctuary is a good place for hyenas. So anywhere where you have a Jaipur, the city of Jaipur, the capital of Rajasthan, has hyenas in the heart of Jaipur. That's how interesting it is. So the hyenas are all over the place. But since you're talking about destinations, I'll say Bharatpur, Ranthambore, Jaipur, and Bera, quite easily the best spots to see hyenas. Yeah,
Okay, so Rajasthan primarily then for
yeah.
those.
In fact, Kota is a good place also if
Okay.
you've ever been there.
And you mentioned briefly about the Gangetic dolphins. Again, someone's asked kind of what are the opportunities for whale or dolphin watching off the coast of India?
We actually don't have very good whale watching in India. But when you go to parts of India like the Chilika Lake or the Sundarbans, when you're out on the boat in the brackish water, you actually see the Irrawaddy dolphin, which is a brackish water dolphin. And you also have chances of seeing the Gangetic River dolphin. But Gangetic River dolphin is better seen in Kaziranga and of course in a small river called the Chambal, which is close to Delhi. So otherwise, what we generally show are the brackish water dolphins or the Irrawaddy dolphins in Sundarbans and Chilka Lake, and the blind freshwater dolphins or the Gangetic dolphins in Chambal and Kaziranga. We actually don't have very good marine mammal watching, but Sri Lanka is generally good for that. We actually don't have very good watching in India.
Okay, fine. And again, tigers tends to be, especially for a first-time visitor, tigers are understandably, the animal that most people want to see. So for a first-time visitor to India, where would you recommend is the best chances of seeing tigers or the most number of tiger sightings?
Well, of course, tigers has the unique habit of going and seeking water and cooling off in small water puddles in the summer months. So there are a lot of parks in India where you can see tigers. In fact, you can see tigers all the way from October till June, which is the whole season, because tigers are active and they're territorial animals, and they're animals of creatures of habit. So you can see them through the time. But if you feel like you want to maximize your chances, the hotter months when the tigers want to cool off in the remaining smaller water puddles, that would be a best time to go there. And of course, there are parks like Ranthambore, Panna, Bandhavgarh, Khana, Satpura, a whole wide range of parks where you can see them.
So central India is kind of,
Yeah,
okay, fine.
of course. That's a safe bet, you can say.
And how long would you recommend? I mean, I know it can depend on people's time and budget, obviously, but how long would you recommend is advisable for a wildlife trip in India?
Well, of course, I would say a year. I think a year is a good amount of time to spend in India for wildlife, maybe two. But I don't know. I mean, if you want to specifically see tigers, it's different. If you want a bird, it's different. Depends on where you're going, which region. I'm sure if you contact people like Rahul, I'm sure he'll be able to put in a good a plan for you guys. But having said that, there is nothing different. But definitely don't come for 2 nights or 3 nights.
Yeah,
Make it
sure.
at least a week or two.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is obviously we do organize purely wildlife trips, but for those who want to combine wildlife with culture, then obviously there's probably very few places like India that offer both in that sense. But yeah, usually we see people traveling for 2 to 3 weeks. And do you see a move towards people basing themselves more in one park, for example, for longer time, or would you advise people to experience diversity to move between parks quite frequently? What are your thoughts on that?
I would suggest there are different kinds of parks, right? Every park has its own character. Like certain parks I would be very honest and say Satpura is one park where I can spend 10 days or a week because of the variety of experiences. But a park like Bandhavgarh or Kana, I would spend 3 to 4 nights because that's what you really need to do, and that you will be doing justice to those parks by spending 3 4 nights. But there are parts of India like Kaziranga, Satpura, maybe the Himalayas, or if you're on a walk somewhere, or southern Western Ghats. Those are places where I would suggest you spend longer time in one place. So it's about getting the right balance. It's not about doing one kind of trip. I mean, if you can do 2 parks and where you do 3 nights and do a longer stint in another, it's kind of balances everything and you get a better picture of the whole Indian wildlife scene. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. And Celia has asked about flying squirrels. Are they common, and where would you best see flying squirrels?
Oh, flying squirrels. In fact, definitely all over the country, we have flying squirrels. In fact, we have a lot of species of flying squirrels. But having said that, the most widespread is the Indian giant flying squirrel, which is found all over the country. But every park has some lodges or some trees where people know they roost. So the best thing is to travel to a park and ask your guide or your naturalist, where can I go see a flying squirrel? And usually if you go sit under that tree at dusk, they come out and they glide, and they are creatures of habit again. So it's like clockwork. They literally come out at, if I tell you they come out at 5:45 this month, they will be out on the dot at 5:45, and that's how predictable they are. But the only thing is, you will have to go inquire with your naturalist, like parks like Satpura, Bandhavgarh, Kana, Panna, Nagarhole. All these parks have flying squirrels. So you just have to go, even if you go to Kaziranga, there are flying squirrels of a different kind outside the park. Corbett has flying squirrels outside the park. So it's about just asking the right questions to your guide, and he will be able to find you one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and just another quick question regarding accommodation options in parks. I mean, generally, what's been your experience with standard accommodation?
Well, I mean, in India, the one difference between India and Africa, if you've been to Africa, is that we don't have accommodations inside the park. So our parks are inviolate zones where you can go in for your safari, but you don't get to stay inside the park or have a camp inside the park like you do in other parts of the world. So you have very good lodges set up in the buffer zone of the parks. And there are lodges of different standard lodges, of course, which are, some lodges have areas which can be as big as 150 or 200 acres. So they have their own private forest over there. So there are all kinds of options in the parks. Depends on where you're going, what time of the year, what kind of accommodation you prefer. There's all kinds.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also, I mean, just one thing, I've seen a few comments about kind of photography. I mean, obviously we've seen that, I mean, your photographs are absolutely incredible. And many people who do go on wildlife trips are keen photographers. So what we do try to ensure as well is that they benefit from, the likes of yourselves in terms of, your experience and some of the tips, I guess, for photography on, in India when it comes to wildlife. And again, we understand that certain kind of photographic equipment can be quite heavy, quite large. And again, depending on the numbers, we can also organize, the loaning of these as well. So again, I mean, Surya, I mean, you've obviously spent a significant time photographing in India. I mean, are there any, I mean, it's difficult to maybe give an easy tip for photographers. I mean, is there anything you would just recommend or advise for anyone coming to do a photography trip?
Again, a very, very broad question, which will have different answers depending on where you're traveling to. But general rule of thumb is carry 2 lenses if you're doing a professional photography, which is can be zoom, for example, like a 70-200. and then maybe carry a 400 or a 500. If you really don't recommend people carrying wide angle lenses, simply because the phones are so good nowadays, and you can actually save some space in your bag because your phones can do very good wide angle photography. So, but having said that, I wouldn't be able to give a one definite answer to such a question. I roamed around for a few years with a big fat lens, but nowadays I just carry a small camera, and I'm very happy with that. So just maybe when you do your trip, ask that question. And but the one thing which Rahul suggested, which made a lot of sense, is the fact that you don't have to carry everything. There is rental options in our country, and if booked well in advance, you can get the specific lenses or the camera equipment that you need. So that option is there.
Yeah. Okay, Surya, thank you very much. I appreciate it's very late where you are. Thank you again for obviously your amazing presentation. Obviously the photographs again were stunning. And yeah, and everybody else who was able to join this this presentation. We will be putting this live on our website in due course. We'll be sending a link for that. Otherwise, it'll be on the events page for you to look at in the next few days. But yeah, just thank you to everyone again. And if there are any questions, by all means, do contact us via email, ask@travelunknown.com. And we are going to be hosting another talk in a couple of weeks' time on Georgia with Sophie Ibbotson again. So I do hope to see most of you on that as well if we can. And again, just thank you, Surya, and yeah, see you all hopefully.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for the chance to speak about all these things. If at least we can't travel to these places right now, it's at least good to speak about it.
Yeah,
it's nice.
Perfect. Thank you, Surya. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.